were the therapist and they're like laying there like, oh my God. But
I originally wanted to wear like really big glasses like the girl, the friend on How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. When she's like, and how did that make you feel?
I would prioritize showing up before you ever prioritize your grid, but then you'll get there and then you can prioritize the grid a little bit more. But I think it helps build confidence because when it looks good, you're going to be like, oh, I feel really good about this.
What's the meme where they're like, how did this reel only get 100 views? I know I watched it at least 500 times. Like, how do I get more leads?
How do I stand out in my market?
Is it unprofessional to talk about my kids on Instagram?
Should I have one account or two?
Do I really need a personal brand as a real estate agent?
We are the Modern Agent Marketing Girls. We are 2 agents turned marketing experts who believe you can become the go-to real estate girl in your market, all because you are you. I'm Chelsea Peterson, founder and CEO of Modern Agent Social Club.
And I'm Kayla Fox, Modern Agent's content creator. Let us be your guides as we talk about what it means to market your real estate business the modern way.
So refill your favorite beverage, open your notes app, and get ready to build a business and a brand you're obsessed with. Let's go.
Welcome back to another episode of the Marketing Girls podcast. I like your sweater today.
Thank you. I'm so excited. I was thinking we were on a live with our members right before this, and I was like, I'm so excited to record this podcast. I love our lives with our members too, but today is like a fun little topic that we have that we've been kind of doing for a few weeks over on our Instagram account. Mm-hmm. Do you want to tell our friends what it is?
Yeah. Do you hear that ringing sound? It's like, hello, Marketing Therapy Thursday. How can we help your account?
Oh, Olsen & Olsen Mystery Line will solve any crime by dinner time.
That's exactly what this feels like. I just like entered my 90s nostalgic self.
I want to watch all of those movies now. Do you have a favorite?
Gosh, I don't even remember like specifics. I just remember my sister and I thinking, wow, someday we're going to be just like them.
I wanted a sister so bad because of the Mary-Kate and Ashley movies. I loved To Grandmother's House We Go, which was like the Christmas one. Uh-huh. And then I like loved but hated Double Double Toil and Trouble because it was scary. Oh my gosh. Like they were in that like
I don't remember
house. I don't know. They're like glimpses in my brain. But anyways, so good. So yeah, Marketing Therapy Thursday. If you recognize the pink phone is our Thursday series that we host over on the Modern Agent Instagram, and we put up a question sticker and answer everyone's questions, whether you want us to say like, can you audit my profile? How do I write a better bio? Why aren't my reels getting better reach? What else? What other questions do we see?
I mean, so many. And I think the funny thing is when we kind of take turns going through them every other week because we take a lot of time responding to every one of these people, especially if they're like, can we do an Instagram audit or something? We're not just going to throw some bogus answer at you. We really look at your account. We look to see, how often we're seeing your face, hearing your voice, getting to know your personality, and then just like pointing those things out to you. So there are a few questions that usually kind of lead us down to some of the same answers, but we just thought it would be fun to dive into just a couple of the questions, and maybe we can even make this like a recurring, episode. Like every couple of months, we dive back into marketing therapy, and it's basically our way of having like a little heart-to-heart with you and a little like one-on-one conversation with like what's going on. So hopefully this episode feels like a big old hug.
I think it also is good because what I notice as people start to ask questions, more will roll in. So it's like what I can see is that even though you maybe didn't even think of that question, that our answers usually help way more people than just the person who asked the question. So I'm like, it would be cool to do this on the podcast. Let's dive into like 4 of the questions we've gotten recently, and then you guys can tell us like, hey, we want like a deep dive on that, and we could deep dive on it in the podcast for a whole episode. Like we had one about like writing your bio, and I'm like, that could be a whole episode where we really deep dive, like workshop style. And I love workshop style episodes too. So probably more of that to come. But before we dive in, I want to know, what are you watching or reading or listening to right now?
All 3 are the same answer because I just finished Daisy Jones and the Six. And I'd heard about that book forever, and I didn't really understand even what it was about. When I started it, I didn't realize it was like a documentary, but it like totally had me hooked. And now I just finished that book. So just last night, we started the first episode on Amazon Prime. And even like the music and stuff in it, I really like it. I feel like it's so realistic and it really sucks you into life in those times. So have you read that book?
I actually read like half of it whenever it came out, and it was like my book that I would read if I like sat by the pool or something, which wasn't that often. So I didn't make it through. And then like I always read it on my Kindle, so I never finished it, but it was so good. And now it's my book club book. So I'm starting it over because it's been a while, and then I want to watch the show. So I always, when I saw the show come out a couple years ago, I was like, I need to read the book first. So I'm going to do both. I am reading Blue Sisters, I think it's called. It was like, I keep seeing it everywhere is rated really good along with The Wedding People, which I loved. So it's really slow so far. I'm like 20% in, but I can see it being a good storyline, and they're doing like a lot of character development. So I think it will get better. And I'm watching Summer House because I am somehow got sucked into that reality show, and I binge watched the first 5 seasons like a year ago, and I got so burnt out from it, and I'm like, I need a break. And now I want to watch the upcoming season, so I'm finishing, and now I'm sucked right back in. So
I'm like, okay, where do you even watch that? I have not heard of this.
On Peacock. It's like a reality show
okay.
with, I don't even know how to explain it. They're people in like their 30s and early 40s even, and they rent a house in the Hamptons every summer, and they go party there every weekend of the whole summer, but they're like grown adults, and then they go back to the city during the week.
Super realistic. That's exactly how I spend my weekends.
Exactly. Like they have theme parties, which I think that's kind of fun. Definitely not how I want to spend my weekend, but I love seeing other people's drama. And I feel like I know a lot of like, because I listened to one of the girls' podcasts, Giggly Squad, Paige DeSorbo's podcast, and so I hear current things, and I'm like, well, I need to get caught up on that show so I know what's going on, and I want to see it develop. Like her and her boyfriend in real life just broke up, and I'm like, well, I need to go watch the rest of their relationship unfold before it ends.
Right.
It's so ridiculous.
I have to do that before I can get some sleep at night. So
this is the example I always think of when I'm like, do some like day in the lifestyle content. Not that you have the drama and the whatever, but it's like, it's just this like peek into someone's life that can be fun to consume if you do it in a way that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Okay. Let's dive in.
So, and just to clarify, we do marketing therapy on Thursdays. I know today's Tuesday, but on Thursdays, and we do it from our Modern Agent Social Club account on Instagram. So not on our Marketing Girls account, but the actual social club one. So just for reference, we'll put it in the show notes for you.
This rolls right into the first question, actually. Should I have one account or two? I like to frame it in this way. If you were hosting 2 different parties and you put out your invitation, and on one invitation it was like, we're going to have wine and apps and we're going to watch It's Complicated. I don't know, like we're going to have fun. We're going to have pizza. And the other invitation said like, I'm going to hand out business cards and talk about my listings, period. Mm-hmm. Which party would you go to? You're not going to the business cards and the listings. Like people aren't going there. So when people are like, should I have my personal account separate? Should I have a business account? No one on Instagram wants to go to a business account to like hang out, consume content, follow it, whatever. From the case of being in real estate, I think there are certain situations where having a business account could make sense that's separate from a personal. However, in the case of being an agent, I always frame it as like you are the one people are hiring to sell their house to help them buy a house. So they need to know you. Mm-hmm. So if you want them to interact with you and you want to be the one that's top of mind, you want to be the go-to for them, like they need to see you more often than just sharing real estate specific and heavy content. So how can you kind of blend it all into one party where like you do share about your business, you do share about your life, you do share a combination of all the things so that you are this multidimensional brand and you're not just this billboard business card logo. I know you could go all different directions of like, what if I don't want to share my kids? What if this? What if that? So we can kind of dive into that a little bit, but what do you think about that answer?
Yeah, I think that the only thing is when you start using one account to share both your personal brand and your business, you have to stop thinking about your account as your personal account. And I put that in air quotations. If you look way far back on my Instagram, you will find where I was just using it as just a personal account, where I was just sharing pictures of my kids and, you know, things that we were doing or whatever, like behind the scenes of my life. And there was no intention behind it other than just to share and connect with like my sister and sister-in-law on it. When I started my business, I started using it in a completely different way. That doesn't mean that I don't share pictures of my life, my family behind the scenes. And that's a personal preference. I think there's a lot of different ways you could go about it. I just share it in a different way. So now, most of the time, when I am sharing like photos or videos or behind the scenes with my kids, it's shared more from the lens of either like out of office, like this is what I'm doing, or this is my why, like this is what I work for, or like this is how I balance motherhood and my career. Like it's a beautiful blend. Do you know what I mean? I quit sharing the, you know, Levi lost a tooth. Like it's a different mindset. And I know, but that being said, just for full transparency, my Facebook account is pretty much a personal account. That's where I'll share more like updates with my family or like vacation photos. I'll ask questions about things that are going on in our community. Like, and I use that just as a way to connect with like my personal people. I don't connect with like other agents and stuff on there. So whenever you're going to combine the two and have just one account, because it's a lot easier, honestly, you just have to shift your mindset a little bit about like the purpose behind every post. And don't post things in the context of the way that you would just like send them to your mom to like update her on how like your kids are doing or how your dog's doing or whatever. Use it more strategically, which we teach you how to do that.
It reminds me of like the old updates, like Levi lost a tooth, that you just put that on there. I think with Instagram, you can do a lot of that stuff. Like if you're like, I really like talking about my kids, like you can do it in your stories, or you could do it on Facebook, or you could just limit it a little bit, or maybe you don't show your kids' faces. So you kind of show them like from the back, or like they're in your content, but it's not like the focal point. Or maybe you keep your Facebook super private and you just share your kids over there and not on Instagram. I think like once you start to show up in this like personal brand style of a way that we teach, it just becomes easy to figure out your balance. Whereas like if you're just starting right this second, you're like, oh, I have no idea what that would look like. It's going to take some like actually like putting in the time of creating content in that way, or posting in that way, sharing in that way to do that. But it's really thinking about like you're going to connect with someone because you have something in common. Or like let's share the Donald Miller example of why someone follows you.
Why someone follows you. He did a podcast episode that we listened to the other day that was talking about like the 3 reasons why people follow you. The first one was so they could sleep with you, which we decided that's not what we're going to teach agents to do. The second one is so that, or is because they like you. And they like want to be your friend. And the third one is because they want to be like you. Like they want to be around you. They want like, they like the vibes you're putting off. They want to be in like proximity with you. So when you think about those two, or there's 3, but let's just focus on the 2. When you think about those 2 reasons to follow you, that's basically business and personal. Like that's those 2 worlds combined, and like, and it's strategic. It's not just like haphazard, but that's basically the beauty of having just one account.
It becomes a lot easier because you're not. So I think of this too, like if you kept a personal account and you're like, well, that's where I'm going to share like when I go on vacation, that's where I'm going to put the pictures of my kids. That's where I'm going to share what I'm watching on TV. That's where I'm going to share what I made for dinner. That's where I'm going to share this. Then your business account, it's like forced to become this island all alone that no one wants to visit, no one wants to go to, because every time you do show up there, it's super business. So when you have one, you're like forced to blend the 2 parties together. And I think that's what makes it entertaining and interesting. And then when you pair that with kind of bringing in more of your real estate behind the scenes style content that isn't so much like, look at me, or look at this listing that I just sold, or look at this. It's more like, hey, come with me to show a house in this neighborhood and I'll tell you if my buyer's ready an offer. Like it becomes this fun way. So it has like this personal feel even though you're sharing the business content. And I think the fact that you have just one makes that a lot easier in your brain to like differentiate instead of thinking like, well, this one's for that and that one's for this. Like it just forces you to do it. So it's easier, and it's way easier to manage just one.
100%.
Like, oh my gosh, someone that I followed forever, she know, like I had this struggle because, and this is a totally different example, but Modern Agent has its own Instagram, and it needs it because it's like this community of agents and all these things. Like, I don't think that should be run from my personal Chelsea Peterson Instagram account. It started over there. And then I was like, okay, this is becoming this big community. It needs to become like almost if as an agent, you eventually started a brokerage. Maybe the brokerage would have its own account at some point, right? Or you started and you wanted to get like thousands of agents to be part of it. That might be the point where you have like another Instagram. But as a solo, single individual agent, having your own Instagram, hands down, have one account. But like I struggle still, and I'm like, I struggle because I don't have time. Like I want to focus on the Modern Agent, but my personal brand helped build this whole thing like 100%. So then I like have this back and forth struggle, and I'm like, well, it is what it is in my scenario. But as an agent, and when you have that opportunity to have one and blend it all together, it's so much easier.
Totally.
So take it from my personal experience.
Exactly. Before we go to the next one, the last thing that I'll say as far as like mom life and like motherhood and whatnot and how to like balance all of that. One girl had written in just saying like, I'm kind of struggling with this. Like, what do I do? And I just told her, when you are sharing anything about your family, share it from the point of your motherhood, not their childhood. And I think when you can think of it that way, the way that you share about them and the way that you tie them into your content, it becomes much less random and much more intentional. That like, oh, that is what her life is like as a realtor and a mom and all of those things in our town, and less about sharing every little detail about your child. So
can you give an example of like what that might, like give one story example?
Okay, just like off the top of my head, I take my kids to the library a lot. My kids love it. They love reading, all of those things. I could share about how, oh, we're going to the library, we're reading these books, and, this is what we love. We love playtime there. We love all of these things. Or I could share mom hack, or like work from home mom hack. Take your laptop to the library and let your kids play while you work. And not that I don't have, like, I definitely share the books that I'm reading with my kids and those kind of things too, but that makes it feel a lot less out of place because my whole account is all about like someone who works from home as a mom and who, has like a creative job and all of that, but still has a bunch of kids. So I think that's like just the simplest way. So as like a real estate agent, you could share like, we're going to the park today, or you could share like stopping at the park in between showings. Like it's just those little, it's like that subliminal real estate. It's that little drip where it feels a lot more like less of a commercial break and more like it's all part of the show. And so I think just kind of being more mindful of those things as you are sharing. And of course, like as you're sharing real estate content and as you're sharing like local content and stuff, you're going to have less squares available for just your children. And I'm not trying to like harp on moms. It's just one thing that I notice a lot when people are writing in is like, what's the disconnect here? And I think a lot of times that is it. So
I think one more last point on that is you don't have to share everything. So it's kind of, you do hone in on, do you want a mom brand? Do you want to be the agent who's mom? Do you want to be the agent who loves to work out? Like it's kind of, you have an angle and you're not going to share all of it. Like sometimes you may drip in that you tried a workout class or you did this or that, but it's not like every day needs to be every part of your day. Right. It's little pieces, little breadcrumbs that make up that brand that you do end up having. So it's not sharing every single picture, every single vacation, you decide what that is.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. What's number 2, Chelsea?
Number 2 is, how do I get a cohesive grid?
Well, I think this is going to be getting a lot easier. Instagram is making some updates where they are allowing you to update like cover photos, and they're allowing you to rearrange your grid apparently. So as of the time of this recording, that has not rolled out, but that will be fun. But just a few things to be mindful of. You can always create some kind of like grid pattern as you're planning your content for the month. And we've offered some of those to our members before. You know, you could have like a real estate graphic here, but then you can have a behind the scenes photo here or a quote or whatever. I think those can be really helpful for some people. To me, for some reason, that's always felt kind of like limiting. So what I personally like to do when I'm going to like, whether I'm posting a new reel and I get to choose the cover photo if I'd like to, or if I'm sharing just like a behind the scenes photo or whatever, I'll just look at my grid and ask myself a couple questions. First, I'm mindful of like the how far away or close the main object in the photo is. For example, like if it's a full body shot, but there's like a bunch of like white space around me, that would be a good picture to put next to one that's maybe a little bit more close up of me or an object or whatever. Because when you kind of balance those two things, it creates a little bit more white space in your grid. And that just makes it a lot more like visually appealing as you're scrolling. It's a little bit easier to absorb like the information and a lot less like overstimulating. So I'm mindful of that. And then just I'm mindful personally of like the colors and stuff that are in our photos. This is for like myself, but also for like our Modern Agent account. We try to kind of keep things fairly neutral, but have pops of color here and there. So if I'm noticing like, oh, the last two pictures had a lot of color in them, the next one I'll try to be more neutral or vice versa. But those are just things that I'm mindful of and that I think makes it easier. I don't think it's worth obsessing over, but I know obviously we want to show up feeling good about ourselves and our brand, so this kind of aesthetic does matter. But what would you say?
I was listening to that Paige DeSorbo's podcast, and she was saying how like she needs an aesthetic grid. Like she's just obsessed. She's like, I'm not following you if you don't have an aesthetic grid. And she's not someone to take that with a grain of salt. She's a celebrity. Anyways, but they were joking saying like, what if guys were like that? Like, oh my gosh, you do not have an aesthetic grid. I'm not going to date you.
Right.
They're like, well, that's probably not going to happen.
Right.
But anyways, I think going back to the grid pattern, one way to look at it is it depends on your personality type, but a grid pattern could help you with creating that balance of what to post. So even more so beyond the graphic / quote / picture of you, it can kind of help you with, okay, the graphic might in your mind think I'm going to share something related to real estate. So maybe I'm going to share a reel that's face to cam talking about why the 2025 market is so different than 2024 if you're selling. Mm-hmm. But the text on top is going to say like whatever that hook is, like what you need to know about selling in 2025 because it's nothing like 2024. So that hook is almost like, even though it's a reel, it's a graphic because you have that text on it. And that's a real estate topic. It's easy because you want the hook on there, all the things. And then you have like the next part of your grid could be behind the scenes. This could be where you're sharing like a photo dump carousel of, we needed another word for dump. I hate that word. Yeah. But photo, what's another word? Fountain.
Drop.
I don't know. Photo drop carousel. I don't know. Where you have like, we just did this one recently. It was like January joys. Like what is bringing me joy in January? And it was like, one photo could be like the book you're reading, and then it could be a restaurant you tried. It could be something you did with your family or your cozy reading nook, or that you're watching your favorite show, your comfort show, that you lit a candle, whatever, your January joy. So like that could be your behind the scenes, or it could be behind the scenes of real estate, or a combination of all the things. And then your third part of your grid could be local. And that might be just a picture. It might have a picture with like the name of the place on it. It might have like who to follow in Milwaukee on Instagram. And that could be like the little text. So it's kind of like when you differentiate that, it helps your grid look good because you're getting like a little bit of text, then you're getting just like a photo, then you're getting more white space or whatever it might look like. And that automatically helps, but it also at the same time is helping you break up what you're sharing. So it's not like you have 18 real estate graphics in a row or 20 personal photos in a row. Like having that balance is important. So when someone comes, they're like, okay, here's what this account is about. Here's what they're going to share. They're going to share, like we have a lot of like, we do these, what we call mini bio slides on the end of a carousel where it kind of summarizes like, hey, here's what you can expect if you follow me. Like follow me for more, like mom life, showing houses and city name, and blah, blah, blah. Like what, like Diet Coke, what your third thing. And that's kind of how you can think about your grid. Like those are kind of the pieces I'm sharing. So here's how I'll break it up. My other main tips for your grid. If you can figure out these 2 things, your grid will look so much better. And I personally think having a grid that looks okay, like I would prioritize showing up before you ever prioritize your grid, but then you'll get there and then you can prioritize the grid a little bit more. But I think it helps build confidence because when it looks good, you're going to be like, oh, I feel really good about this. Like if the seller looks me up, like this is going to be good. But only if the content behind the good looking grid is good. It's not about having like, oh, all black and white, everything is pristine and beautiful, but I'm literally giving just word vomit about real estate content and I'm not sharing anything about what it's like to work with me. I'm not sharing anything about local. I'm not sharing anything about who I am as an agent and a human. Like then it's not okay. Like that's not a good look. You want someone to get there and learn something about you, learn what it's like to work with you, see your face, hear your voice. That's like what I always say. Yeah. So with that being said, 2 things that I think can help you a lot is coming up with a color palette. And you don't need like some fancy professional color palette that a designer would create. But what you could do is go on Pinterest and search brand color palettes and kind of see what pulls your eye. Like it could even be a color. Like I want a pop of pink. I want a pop of neon yellow. Yeah. And that's the color you use as your real text. That's the color you use maybe as your like background on a graphic, or you weave it in there like throughout different pieces of content. So you always kind of know there's like a splash of pink in some way, somehow, or a splash of yellow. If you look at our grid, you'll see the splashes of pink. There's like a subtle red. There's like little tiny pops. It's not like it's every post is pink and red and it's a graphic. Like, so that's one really easy way. And then the second part to that is using a consistent font. So using the same font in your reels, using the same font in any kind of graphic or like carousel post. Consistent font will make your feed look very cohesive because it's not going to be like this handwritten font and then this editorial font and then this sans serif font and where it's all messy. Like you want it to look like it goes there. And I guess taking this beyond the grid, what this helps with is brand recognition. Yeah. Like someone could see your post or story in the wild and be like, that's Chelsea's because it has the color pop, it has the font, it has the look. Yeah. So those are my easy like tips.
For sure. We also tell members to use Dupe Photos. It's DUPE Photos. It's a free app. And on there are like tons of photos. What's really cool about these is they are like iPhone photos from creators, but you can use them in your content and in your like marketing materials, emails, all the things. What I love about them, first of all, is it's great. Like there's a lot of them that look like, oh, I could have taken that photo. And if I forgot to take a picture at that coffee shop where I met a client, I can use this photo instead and it looks similar. Or there's some like unique poses or unique like just shots that I think to myself like, oh, I'm going to recreate that next time I create content. And so that's a really great free resource to use. And again, you can like use them for your own content, especially if you're like, I love this, but I need more white space or this photo's too busy. That's a great place to go look for photos. So we love that resource as well. Number 3, the local followers versus agent followers. We have a lot of people who talk about like, okay, I'm getting engagement with my content. Unfortunately, it's all real estate agents. What do I do? What do you tell them when that happens, Chelsea?
Well, I kind of honestly changed my opinion on this a little bit recently because they are your industry peers. So like you are going back to that Donald Miller example, you're going to attract people. If you're doing a good job with your content, they're going to follow you because they're like, I want to be like that. I want my feed to look like that. In fact, I just had a member, she's been a member forever, had a baby, kind of got out of the loop a little bit, has just like kind of getting back into the game. And she messaged me and said like, hey, can you send me a few members who are like killing it on video? I just need some inspiration. And I was like, sure. So like that is part of it. Do you want all agents to follow you? No. I kind of think when I see an account that has a ton of engagement and it's a real estate account, they're probably selling something to agents is like my go-to, what tends to happen when I look and dig. Like, yep, they have a course for agents or they have this or that for agents. And that's why agents like it because they're kind of creating for agents. I always kind of say like with our content, when we create content, like for our members, for example, we're not creating content that other agents are going to like. We're creating content that your followers and people in your local community are hopefully going to like or stop the scroll for. So I think sometimes like an agent will get in there and be like, well, where's the post about listing your house, blah, blah, blah. Or like the more basic generic way of saying it. And it's like, Well, that would attract agents. We're wording it, look, this is the same piece of content, but we're wording it in a way that's going to like shift their perspective, hook their mindset, make them think differently, make them want to read it. Because typically, if something doesn't resonate with you because you're not moving tomorrow, you're going to scroll right by. If it's like, oh, just listed, scroll right by. Just sold, scroll right by. Like, we don't want people to keep scrolling by because then they're not going to even be shown our content. So we want them to stop. We want them to read it. Even if, like today we did a training with our members and we went through some content and I was like, dang, this content is so good. And I don't mean to like say this about us because Kayla creates it anyways, not me. So I can say that. But it's so good because it's just like, it like sucks you in as a person consuming content who's not necessarily like, I need something very blatant real estate. Like one was about like features buyers are looking for. And essentially that's what it was saying. And so that is helpful to a seller potentially who's going to think about moving sometime in the next 12 months. If they're all looking for updated kitchens, maybe they're going to want, like, that would be helpful information. Like, I would want to know that as a homeowner, even though I'm not thinking about selling, it's still interesting content. And now you're positioned as this expert, you're positioned as this resource to me, but it's not like you're telling me like, here's how to sell your house. Like, it's more like a roundabout way of like, hey, here's what buyers are looking for in this city, you know?
Right.
And I think
included Christina Aguilera lyrics for like what a girl wants.
What a girl wants.
Yeah, just like those little like touches, which seem so like fluffy and unnecessary, but that's what connects people. Like, people are getting on the app to build those connections and have those conversations. So if you're making them recall a song from the early 2000s that they like totally jammed to at prom, like, you've got a client for life. Whenever they choose to move, they're going to remember you.
Yeah. So the whole point of this question, how do I get followers who aren't agents? It would be what are you posting about? Does your content resonate? Like, I always think about the real estate memes that every real estate agent can relate to, about whether it's like struggles with your clients, like, it doesn't matter what it is, but if that resonates with agents, that's not going to resonate with your ideal client, your person that's going to sell their $1 million house. Like, that's not going to resonate with them. So if that's the kind of content you're posting, that's who you're going to attract as other agents. So knowing first and foremost, who am I trying to attract? And then B, kind of thinking through like, what would make them stop and read this, consume this, watch this? It can still be about real estate, but like, how can you have that little tweak that it's like more about them and for them in an entertaining way than more about you as you, the agent, and for other agents? Like, they're not in our industry. They don't get that stuff. Yeah. They don't get those jokes, you know?
I think that if you, like, just as a whole, and this isn't true across the board, but as a whole, your real estate content that is blatant is going to attract real estate agents. Your personal brand, your take on your local area, what you love doing in the morning, those kind of things, that's what's going to attract local followers. So yes, you're going to mix the two if you do it right, and if you do like marketing the modern way, and so you're going to have a little bit of both. But that's just another reason why like personal brand matters so much. And just another thing to keep in mind is like, real estate agents are agents who are using Instagram. They understand the point behind liking, commenting, sharing, all of those things. Your average Instagram user, like people in your community, your neighbors, most of them are just scrolling and they're just lurking and they're seeing your things, or maybe they haven't clicked that follow button yet, but you're still showing up for them. They aren't thinking to themselves, like, I should engage with this post. They're just thinking like, oh, that's funny or whatever. And you probably have had situations where, you know, you maybe had posted something that didn't get a lot of engagement, but then you go to the grocery store or to church or whatever, run into someone and they talk to you about that. And you're like, I didn't even realize you would have seen that. And so we just have to keep in mind that no matter who's engaging with what, our local community, if we're doing it right, is seeing our content and we are staying top of mind. So
I love that you shared that part. That is something that you should definitely remember and not let it get to you if you feel like your engagement's kind of low. Also, this could help you if you do see agents posting stuff that you're like, oh my God, like they have so much engagement. Tap their likes and scroll through. It's going to be like real estate agent Chelsea, real estate by Chelsea, Chelsea loves homes. That's who's liking it. And that's fine. That's great. But like, just so you know, they're in the same situation. Their engagement is coming from agents when it's an agent-centric piece of content. Anyways, I hope that helps. But I really think focusing on local is always my other piece of advice when it comes to like, why aren't local people engaging with my content or liking it anyways. Again, there's a lot of lurkers in there. That is what it is. But when you think about that, like if I'm sharing things that just people in my community want to see, it kind of removes the like agent focus. And then that helps bring those people out. And like kind of what Kayla, even going back to the motherhood example that you shared, saying it in that way of like, as a mom of 2 and a city name real estate agent, we love going to these 3 places in the summer. And it's like, oh, I want to know what those are. And it becomes desirable to consume and learn from you and what you're sharing. And you're still positioning yourself as that agent, but you're like adding another layer.
Yep.
It's almost like a 7-layer salad is what, or the trifle they make on Friends is really what our strategy is. It's like
Mine
you're going
is
to layer.
sauteed with beef or peas and onions.
I think it sounds good. I'm with Joey. I love sweet and salty, and it's got to have a little bit of that. So
Hilarious.
anyways, if you think of it as those layers, like you have your real estate as a layer. Maybe it's the top layer, right? Like that's the most important, the top layer is probably whipped cream. This is the most important. And then you have like your deeper layers that are like who you are and that motherhood angle, or that you love to stay organized, that you love a good workout, that you like any of those pieces. And then you have your layer where it's your local city. Like here's what I love about where we live. And here's like, you have all those layers and you mush them together, and it's not going to be the trifle. It's going to be a really good dessert.
I love that. Okay, we have one more that we're going to address today. Hopefully we're going to get around to all of these at some point in time. But I'll just start by saying one thing that I've noticed with doing these marketing therapy sessions is that when we first post about it at like 10 a.m. and start getting questions, a lot of the questions are kind of the first couple things we talked about. It's kind of about like, just do an overall audit, or can you look at this, or why is this not working, whatever. There are a lot of times that after I go to bed, even questions roll in that I end up addressing and Chelsea ends up addressing like via DM. And most of the time, those questions boil down to, what if I'm just feeling like an imposter? Or what if I just feel so cringy? Or like, how do you get over seeing your face on camera? How do you get over hearing your voice? Like, just like those deeper insecurities that, let's be honest, all of us struggle with. I still struggle with it. I'm sure you do too, Chelsea. Like, I don't think that ever goes away. I think deep down, we always feel like a little bit of a fraud. And I think we feel that way, not because we are, but because we want to serve from like the most sincere place, and we don't want to lead anyone astray. And I think that's if you're feeling a little bit of that insecurity or that little bit of that imposter syndrome, that's probably why, and that's a sign that you're doing it right. So we could go on and on and on about this, but I've been reading this book called U Squared. It's a really short little book, but there's a segment on it that I read that I thought I'm just going to read aloud to you, because I feel like you have to remember that you have something so unique to offer. And if you don't speak up and offer it, your community will suffer. And it might sound like a bit harsh, but I think that it's true. Like, all of us have unique gifts. All of us can show up in a way that makes people feel seen and heard and valued. And for some people, you're the only agent they're going to ever want to work with. And if you don't speak up and like show them how you are that person for them, they're going to end up having horrible experiences with other people, or experiences that they just don't feel good about. So I'll read this real quick to you, and I just think this is really powerful. It says, your skepticism, which you presume is based on rational thinking and an objective assessment of factual data about yourself, is rooted in mental junk. Your doubts are not the product of accurate thinking, but habitual thinking. Years ago, you accepted flawed conclusions as correct, and you began to live your life as if those warped ideas about your potential were true. Gosh, I feel like this could like almost make me cry. But this is like so powerful. And cease the bold experiment in living that you brought many breakthrough behaviors as a child. Now it's time for you to find that faith you had in yourself before. For right now, just suspend disbelief. You don't have to be convinced that you can succeed in making a quantum leap, but don't keep on believing those old ideas that you've been carrying around about your personal limits. If it'll make it easier, just hold off for a while believing anything. Just act like you have complete faith. Behave like you had that total conviction. If you must doubt something, doubt your limits. I just took y'all to church.
Ooh, that's so good.
Isn't that
I just
so
ordered that
powerful?
book while you were reading that.
It's so
I needed to
good.
take on my trip.
Yes.
That's such a good reminder. And I think the other book that came to my mind when I got this question last week was Mel Robbins' The Let Them Theory. And I didn't even read it yet. I started listening on Audible, but I listened to her on 3 different podcasts, on Caitlin Bristow's podcast, on Skinny Confidential, and Jenna Kutcher's podcast. And it's so good. Like, she goes deeper in the book for sure, obviously. But it's, if someone thinks you're silly trying to be an influencer, let them. Like, you're going to build a business that you love and that makes you so much more money and that makes you so much happier and gives you freedom to do things that you want to do with your family or with yourself, or go get a facial on a Wednesday. Like, who cares what they think? And I always think of this quote too. Anytime I'm worried about someone judging me or like saying something about what I did on Instagram, is no one will ever judge you if they're doing more than you. Someone doing more than you doesn't have any time to care or judge or think about you. So someone judging you is doing less than you. So it comes from like probably a jealousy thing, probably like a whatever. And if it is like them being mean, then they're a bully and bye. But I've gotten so much better at that. It's hard to do and I still have moments, but like staying true to yourself and how you do show up helps remove the cringe, because you're not trying to do things that other people are necessarily doing. You're just doing what you're okay doing. And that doesn't mean you can't push yourself out of your comfort zone. You've got to get on video. That's a whole nother podcast, which I think I say that every single episode, but I guess we'll never run out. You guys will be here in 2055 still talking about getting on video. And by that point, it'll probably be like a hologram in the air. But I think that you just have to stay like true to what you're okay with. Like, I'm never going to dance on camera, and that's fine, because I would feel cringy if I did, and I don't need to. So like, my way of doing it might be like, what's going to make you feel comfortable? It might be, holding a cup of coffee or having a beverage in your hand while you are talking to the camera, or pouring wine into a glass, or stirring something, or mixing something up. So it's not like a focal point on you. And it also keeps the video visually interesting. So kind of thinking through things like that. Or how can I start? Maybe I'm going to go in my car, put on my sunglasses, and be like, hey, I'm on my way to a showing. I'm going to share X, Y, Z. And you're just going to share a story. You're going to share something about your clients. You're going to share something from a takeaway in a podcast you just listened to that could help other people that are watching your stories. Like, there's so many little things you can do that aren't cringy, right? And I almost think if you are learning, like, you are up to date on like your market, you like have lots of conversations with your clients, you listen to business books and audiobooks and self-help books and podcasts, like even going on your stories and sharing like a takeaway every week can kind of just help build your authority. But it's not even your wisdom. It's the wisdom you learn from someone else. So like, it's not you being cringy. It's you just sharing what you learned. And you can like weave that into like something. It could be like your daily takeaway, like daily coffee with a takeaway, and you share something you saw on a show, read in a book, whatever it is. And it's just kind of an easy way to show up, and it's not even you needing to be the one that like knows everything, right? Like you're just sharing.
Yep. One thing that I'll tell people too is like, nobody thinks about you as much as you think about you. So you post that reel, what's the meme where they're like, how did this reel only get 100 views? I know I watched it at least 500 times. Like, nobody obsesses about your content like you do, and that's okay. But I think that's like, that should make us feel good. Like, people might watch that, and let's just pretend. Let's pretend for a moment that someone watches you, giving a little update while you're standing in front of your house or wherever you are, and they think to themselves, like, I can't believe she's doing that, or who does she think she is? Guess what? The next second, they're moving on with their life. They're not thinking about you again. But you may have just reached out to, two other potential clients who are coming your way, who are now going to remember you, who have now been in your DMs, having those conversations. Your job is not to think about what their thoughts are. Your job is to grow your business and just show up that way.
And help people.
100%. And again, when you're doing it from that sincere place, when you're doing it from like, I mean, that's how Chelsea and I feel about even this podcast, about our members, about talking to agents. Like, we're not doing this to make some money. We're not doing this just to give you content. Like, we're doing this so that you can actually have like the confidence and the freedom in your business to like live the life you want to live. And like, we hope that like we're genuinely coming across that way in everything that we say and do and everything that you hear here.
I have a really good, just quick example story. I was nervous to start this podcast, and I kind of shared this in my final episode of Marketing Bar, because I had a podcast for a year and I was so worried that I like changed course and did something different and didn't go back to that podcast, like I said. And I was like so like stressed out about that. And then finally I was like, you know what? I'm doing this to help more agents and to make it easier to find us and to know that this is for them and to know that this is a resource. And I'm like, that why outweighed my like fear of feeling dumb. And since starting this, we've had so many messages and comments. It's insane. Like, I am just like blown away by the momentum it has already picked up, which is still tiny in the scheme of things, I'm sure. And it's like God telling me, like, you made the right choice. Here you go. Like this, like, thank God you didn't let your fear of feeling cringy that you didn't keep your other podcast stop you from doing this one that's going to serve your people so well. Hopefully that's what we're trying to do anyways. So just a reminder that whatever it is that you're wanting to do to grow your business, like, you have to think of that bigger reason and not all the little excuse reasons that kind of get in your way, because all it's doing is holding you back. And at the end of the day, like, you're doing this for you. I had a quote from Eleanor Roosevelt: "No one can make you feel inferior without your consent." I'm like, oh, that's good.
That Miss Roosevelt sure knew what she was talking about. That's so good. I love that. I love therapy. I love this time. I mean, I feel like so many other episodes and most of our week is spent, really getting into the nitty gritty of marketing and really honing in on like different strategies. But sometimes you just have to have that heart to heart and just remind agents that they are capable of doing these things. They can show up this way. Their community needs them. And their businesses will grow because of it. However big they want it to go, whether they want 10 new clients this year or whether they want to sell 100 houses, whatever that looks like, they're capable of doing that, and they can show up genuinely as themselves, attract the clients that they want, and still have time for book club and for their kids and all the things.
I picture people listening like on a couch as if like we're the therapist and they're like laying there like, oh my God. But
I originally wanted to wear like really big glasses like the friend on How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. When she's like, and how did that make you feel? But yeah, I love that. Awesome. Movie. Chelsea, thanks for going to therapy with me.
Thank you guys. We'll see you next week. And don't forget to pop your questions in every Thursday.
Every Thursday.
Therapy.
Modern Agent Social Club. We'll see you next Tuesday.
I'm so glad we got to hang out today. If you're as sad as I am that our time is up, I've got good news. There are a couple of different ways we can keep the conversation going.
First, follow us on Instagram at Modern Agent Marketing Girls and introduce yourself in the DMs. Also, we always have a free Modern Agent resource available, so check out today's show notes for the goods.
And finally, hang out with other go-to real estate girls like you and finally create a marketing plan that works when you join Modern Agent Social Club. All the details are in today's notes.
XOXO, the Marketing Girls.